Dark Satellite Media.
Cool. Yeah, hit it. We rolling. Yo. Welcome to a very special October episode. Today I got my old friend Jake from I always refer to people, via bands on how we met. So that's kind of like the preface there,
Yeah, but that is truly like how we met. Like, I knew your band before I knew you as a human being, even. Like, I saw your band and was like, I need to talk to that guy.
I think that's what I remember. We played like Deuces Wild together. And
Deuces Wild.
Yeah, we played.
That's right.
We played Deuces Wild together, and it was when you were in Let Me Crazy, and we had a song called Try Again, which kind of like the first couple of chords sounded like Dinosaur Jr.'s. It might have been Little Furry Things, if I remember correctly. And then after we were done, and I think you guys even did a cover of Dinosaur Jr. The Lung that same night.
That's when we were doing The Lung, like at least one version of it, before it became like the medley of the whole side A of that record, basically.
Yeah. So, and then from there, we were just like, I remember like Chris is like after we were done playing, he's like, we got to go play shows together. And that's how it started.
Yeah, it was a true match made in mundane indie rock heaven.
Yeah. So, and to fast forward, you and I, we're going to talk about the movie Halloween, the 2018 movie.
Oh, can't wait.
So it's going to be like
this has been brimming inside me forever.
It's just
all these points, man. Thank you for even letting me have at it with you.
Yeah, well, I think it would be fun because we're Red River's gonna do two kind of like horror movie centric episodes for this month, which we always try to do in October. So this will be the first one,
the real October surprise.
Yeah, this will be the first one, and then the other one's gonna be like the rest of us. It'll be Langan and Parker back in. So nice. I really wanted to deep dive on this movie because you and I love it. I feel like to some extent we're kind of like apologists for the movie.
Which is even insane to say. Like, you look at the stats for the movie, it was a record breaking in terms of, ticket sales. The reviews were generally good, but it was almost an anticipated reaction to believe that like the gatekeepers, the people who Myers has been like a part of their own personal movie canon for like as long as they've been watching movies, like to get precious about it and really pick it apart and find what not to like. Whereas you and I feel like one of the things that we bonded over right away was how much like we want to like things. We're not looking for reasons to pick it apart. And
yeah,
this movie felt like it was just layered with things to like.
I think you hit it on the head with you and I, because I feel like in the age of like social media, it's almost like you have nothing to say if you can't knock it. And you and I are like I'm looking to like, you have to really fuck it up in order for me to just be like, it has to be it has to be Resurrection or Part 5 for me to just feel like this is terrible. Because to me, like I went in as a fan. I mean, I was just sitting there and I'm like, holy shit, 2018 is here. We're going to get this Halloween. And especially coming off of Resurrection and the two,
which I watched last night, by the way, not to interrupt, but we can talk about it now.
Yeah, let's do it. So okay, your first time watching Resurrection, which not only not only is it the worst Halloween movie in the whole franchise, but it might be the worst horror movie sequel that I could think of.
I mean, I can't believe we had such a synchronous thought. Like, I was halfway through the movie and I'm like thinking of all the big slasher franchises and I'm like, yo man, like this is inching closer and closer to being worse than fucking Jason 5. Like, this is the worst slasher franchise movie. Like, I couldn't have even put it together that way. Like, there must have been so much like extra text in Busta Rhymes' contract where it's like, all right, Busta gets to karate kick the shit out of Michael. He gets to trash talk here, here, and here. And dude is just, he's no DMX. He's a piss poor actor.
Holy shit, man. Like just.
But it has such an ambitious beginning, don't you think? Like, I don't know how long it's been since you saw it.
No,
like,
I remember.
I felt like that was strong.
It was a great beginning. You know, like you see Lori, you know, like it was in her. Listen, I guess from picking up from 7, like it was so ridiculous, like how they he switched masks. But you know, I was willing to forgive it. You know, she dies. It was pretty dramatic. Then the one of the other mental patients is like going through like all like the serial killers. You know,
he's doing the expo dump.
Yeah, it's like gearing up, and you're like cool. And then you know, it was like the beginning of like the internet kind of, and like reality, and they were trying to like mix it all together. And on top of that, it's Rick Rosenthal coming back after doing Halloween 2, which I love.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even known that if you told. If you didn't tell me, I would have never guessed that those two movies had any lineage other than Michael Myers.
And you know what probably the worst part about it was, aside from like that fucking Busta Rhymes thing, the mask. The mask was so fucking bad. Like it.
Yo, his name should have been fucking Michael Rosenstein, because that was a fucking Jufro like I have never seen. Like, come on. Like the face was detailed. Like I like how they took the H2O mask, which, you know, spoiler alert, I rented H2O and Resurrection, watched them back to back.
Okay.
And it's like as if they took the Halloween H2O mask and like the face had some shading. Like it had some like of that, like, I don't know, that like deep blue kind of contouring that was missing from like the last several movies, you know, so it did have that kind of creepy look to it. But then you just look up and it's like, dude, like, what are you accomplishing with that head of hair, man?
Yeah, like what?
How is everybody not laughing at you before you stab them?
What is this?
Well, I thought the fucking choice to not only kill Lori, like what balls you have to be like the eighth or ninth movie in a franchise and kill your heroine.
She wanted out. She said
okay.
She like, so after 7, she's like 7's the last one. So when she did H2O, she's like, I'll come back, but this is the last one.
Like a courtesy, like I'll let you do something with this character, but I'm not going to be in another movie, kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of like, you know, and made sense in 98 for her to come back for the 20 year. It's like, okay, you know what? Let's just put this thing to bed. And then somewhere along the way, 4 years later, they were just like, can you just come for like 10 minutes?
Can you just like hold this Raggedy Ann doll full of pills and then let us kill you?
Yeah, you'll be here 10 minutes tops. No worries.
yeah, right.
But,
like you get catering, you show up for an hour and you'll be done for the day.
But
I didn't hate the mask switching, because at the end of H2O, like that was such a. I mean, it'll probably come up later. You know, that it's really like the spiritual sister to the Halloween that we're going to be tackling today. And how certain, like, you know, certain elements are so, I guess, whatever era that H2O came out versus this era. And Michael, like, reaching out for her when he's trapped between the van and the tree. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. This feels like that's, like, not something Michael would do. And the rest of that H2O ending was so satisfying. But then watching Resurrection right afterwards, it's as if that created like a pathway to accept that plot point right away in the beginning. And I'm like, oh, so that's why Michael looked like a giant wuss when he was just like, come help me, you know, because it wasn't him. And I was pretty accepting of that. I kind of liked it, to be quite honest.
Yeah, so, you know, we'll get into 7 because I have some feelings on 7, and I feel like that is like the closest thing to what we're about to discuss. But yeah, so, you know, I wanted to jump in with that first question. You know, like, were you excited when this was announced and who was attached to it?
I could not have been more hyped for this. Like, I haven't seen everything David Gordon Green does, but Danny McBride might be my favorite famous person on earth. Like, there's just something about what he does and the way he does it. I loved Eastbound and Down.
the
I'm a
best.
huge Your Highness fan.
Ha.
Like, I know that's the movie that gets hated on a lot, but you watch it get the Lebowski treatment like 10 years from now, and people are going to be loving Your Highness. It's going to be a fucking cult classic.
It's
so
getting
great.
there. Some people definitely remember it the way you do. I thought it was good.
Hello, fucking Julie. Dude, it rules.
But
And when I heard they were taking on Halloween, my initial just impression was that they had an idea that they brought to Blumhouse. Like that they had been, oh, here's these comedy guys who are just really into this Halloween. And they're like, I imagine them like kind of driving the ship of getting this movie made. And then it turns out that Blum had the property, and he was a fan of Gordon Green's, and he kept offering him films like, you know, to do for Blumhouse, and Gordon Green just kept saying like, no, it's not for me. And then, you know, to hear Jason Blum tell it, it's a lot more animated, but he's like, you know, I sent him a 1-word email that just said Halloween ? And that was the one that he wanted to do. So it's like they got the idea to do it. They had already gotten Carpenter's blessings because, you know, once again, Blum seems to be like a genius at this. He's like, listen, this is going to get made. Like, somebody's going to take this property and make another Halloween movie. You might as well do it with me, who's going to like set you up.
Yeah.
And so like, I couldn't have been more on board.
Yeah, I was the same. To me, like, I don't know your relationship with the Halloween franchise, but to me, out of the big four, and the big four, you know, Friday the 13th, Nightmare, Texas Chainsaw, and this, out of the big four, this is my favorite. This is the one that there's something about the actual character, Michael Myers, that like when I was younger, I would get reoccurring nightmares of Michael Myers. He like embedded into my psyche. Not, you know, like you see you see Freddy Krueger, you know, Robert Englund. It's like a personality, and you see him, and after a while, it kind of like
he's so articulate.
Yeah, it's just like you're like, okay, whatever. Jason seemed like just a big dumb jock. Yeah, like there wasn't like he had a lot of screen time. That's what it was. Texas Chainsaw,
Sure.
Same thing. You know, aside from like the Hitchhiker, but there was something about Michael Myers and like the first bunch of movies where you never really see him. He doesn't really get that much screen time, so he's always lurking.
Right, that's why they call him the Shape.
Yeah,
right? Like because he's just this shape in the distance, in the doorway or something.
And you know, like you see the mask on occasion, like which is what I really love about like the first two films, like John Carpenter, especially the first one, where it's like you know something's gonna happen because you're watching a fucking slasher movie, but man, it was just like this like ramped up fucking like tension, and you'll see the mask here and there, and you're like, oh shit, is he gonna do something? And you just keep waiting. And I love going back to the original. One of my favorite scenes is when I don't know if you remember when Annie forgot the keys to the car and it was locked, and then she went back into the house and she's like, you know, singing a song. She goes and gets the keys, and then she goes and opens up the door without the keys, and then she sits in the car, and at that moment, we're all thinking like, well, that was weird. Why is the car unlocked now? And then she noticed that the windshield was foggy, and then from there, he like got her. But that was after
that's fucking masterful.
After he stalked her for like 30 minutes. Like the whole time you're just like, when is he going to fucking do it? And, you know.
Get on with it.
Yeah. You know, and it's just like.
Well, I wanted to ask you this because, I mean, I came around to my understanding of the Halloween franchise was it was probably the last of the, like you said, like those were the same big four franchises for me. And Halloween seemed like, I felt like it was the one that I came around to last. Like I came to Freddy first because I was young and it's like cartoony and there's all this kind of wild fantasy going on. Friday the 13th was very digestible, like what it was. It really was just like the Cliff's Notes, like fucking Filene's Basement brand Halloween. You know, it's just Sean Cunningham like put everything cool about Halloween into a sifter and, you know, cranked out 100 movies for, you know, to line his pockets with. Not that I'm, you know, I don't want to be too unfair to Jason. You know, he's just a big I love big, wet, sloppy killer Jason. Yep. But like Halloween was, when I was young, I kind of didn't understand its place in the slasher world. It's just like, oh, well, he seems like a Jason that just has a human mask. And then the first thing that jumped out at me when I was watching it, you know, after having seen all these franchise movies was like, oh my God, it's so much scarier that his mask is just a guy.
Yeah.
Like he's getting away with standing on a street corner or like, driving down a suburban street. So like, was Michael your first kind of slasher, or had you come around to him in the same kind of roundabout way?
Shout out to William Shatner for letting that likeness be used.
What?
That,
and Don Post, I believe, right? That was a Don Post Star Trek mask.
I guess so. It was it must have been Star Trek. I mean, what else?
Classic factoid.
Yeah, for sure. What else would there have been in '78? TJ,
right? Like he almost was a Leonard Nimoy, painted white slasher, like in a different timeline, right? 2020 would have never happened, and Leonard Nimoy would be Michael Myers.
That's it. And with the the slasher movie with the pointy ears.
Yeah, the emotionless killer. But like, was Michael like your dude? Like, as far as like your slasher archetype?
Yeah. So for me, it was like all the other movies were fun and all like the one-offs like Prowler and like, the slasher subgenre was my favorite. But there was something always like more appealing to me about a guy who was a fucking human being who escapes from a mental institution, and he's just killing people with no real rhyme or reason. And of course they gave him that reason in part 2. He was like trying to kill his like sister or stepsister, whatever.
Which we can
let's,
if you want to turn this into a fight podcast, like we could start talking about Halloween too.
So what they did with this movie is that they got rid of all like the folklore that they threw in for part 2. So you're okay with that then, right? Like for the beginning.
I at first when I had because the facts that would trickle out before the movie came out, I remember that was one of the big things. Like, hey, there's going to be a Halloween. Fucking the Eastbound and Down guys are attached to it, and they're retconning all the sequels. I like Halloween 2 as a slasher movie, but as a Halloween movie and as a sequel to Halloween 78, like, woof. Like, it fucking sucks as far as I'm concerned. It takes all the, like, nuance and the auteur kind of approach and, like, what was scary about the first one, because that's, like, something that David Gordon Green said, McBride said it. They articulated what I was thinking when I saw the movie was like, you're right. It's so much less scary that he's going after his sister, because if you're not in between him and his sister, you could be fine. Yeah. As long as you're not, having sex or smoking a joint, like you probably won't get killed because he's not after you. Whereas in the first movie, I mean, dude, that like, you just didn't know who was on the fucking chopping block. It was like, that was what was scary about it. This is the suburbs. It could happen to anyone. It could be anybody else. And then all of a sudden we get like 8 movies tracing his bloodline until fucking Paul Rudd has to call down a Norse god or whatever shit they had fucking diluted. So I was really not only psyched for the idea of doing that, but it showed right away how ambitious they were being with the IP. So they were like, they're fans of this movie for generations. Like, we know that there's going to be a lot of touchy subjects, but like, guess what? We're retconning every fucking movie. So right away, I'm like, these dudes are ambitious. They must have a fucking solid idea and a real... They want to push something, in reference to like what you had said before about wanting to like things. The only things that I don't like you can be bad and be earnest. I think that's where we get like the Room and Birdemic. It's like the people making it like are trying to make a good movie.
Birdemic.
But it's like when you see a movie where it's just like, oh, you're just doing this for cash. And this is just
I
like
hate
a cookie
that.
Cutter script.
Yeah.
Like that's what offends me.
Like
it's
Sharknado.
You wasted all these people. Dude, perfect.
Like Sharknado.
You reverse engineer an idea and put it through the motions. You have no respect for your audience, no respect for the people who worked on this movie, like their time. It's just a fucking paycheck to you. And like, that's the kind of shit I don't like.
Listen,
so when they come out saying it's going to be ambitious.
The guy that did Birdemic really thought he was making a good
Yeah, and I love that about him, man. I mean, and let's not pretend that this is not a conversation happening between two guys who were probably raised on like USA Up All Night movies,
Yeah. Them, like you said, The Room, and the other one was Troll. No, Troll 2. Because I remember in the documentary, he was just like, man, he's like, everyone's kind of like laughing at this movie. I don't know why they think it's so funny.
Yeah, right. Even after like it was getting its cult status, guy was like, it is not funny.
Yes. Yeah, holy shit. But let's jump in. Let's jump in this movie. Let's go for the opening. I mean, unless you had anything on your list pre-movie.
I mean, question-wise, not necessarily. I do have kind of things that are pretty beat by beat, but the first question I think is definitely the cold open, you know?
Okay. So,
where are you on that? Like, how did you feel about the cold open?
Okay.
Like everything pre-credits.
So Halloween is definitely one of those movies that always has that cold open. The first one,
which I didn't remember. I didn't remember that was every movie.
Yeah, like the first one, he like stabs up his sister. The second one is just kind of like the ending of the first. But for this one, I love how they throw in the podcasters and how they go into Smith's Grove and they're talking.
Can we talk about that right away? Like,
yeah, let's
as
do.
a podcaster, like, where does this offend you?
Oh no. Yeah, I love it. I love it because it's such a modern thing. And it's something that, people do. Like you're putting together this podcast series, and it might have been the Michael Myers episode, and they're like, all right, we got to go to Smith Grove and we got to go talk to Dr. Sartan.
So you don't take umbrage with the fact that they're recording their intro in the lobby, and you're like, oh man, that's not soundproof. You're not good podcasters. Fuck you guys.
Listen, I'm in my bedroom, holed up, quarantined. Talking
right.
But yeah, I love it because you see like the name Smith Grove, it just brings you back, like right there. I'm in Halloween land already, and then from there, just like the fact that they put on like this like record player of all things, like it's just such a weird
Dude.
It's such a weird detail that they're like, it almost made me feel like I was watching like Shawshank, in like the 50s. And
yeah, good ref, definitely.
So
I remember seeing that montage and being like, it stands out. I mean, granted, we're talking after each of us have viewed this movie like a number of times over a number of years, but I'm watching that montage and going like, oh, this is settling us in as patients of Smith's Grove, or like visitors to Smith's Grove. You see people, freakazoids, wobbling back and forth down the hallways. You hear like hushed conversations between doctors talking to catatonic patients, and it really drives home this idea of like, these people are treated as if they're beyond help, and many of them likely are. So this is just a place where like they're going to put on records and sedate them and feed them and let them eke out their existence that way, and it just settles the mood in so quick. Like one of my best notes, like I'm patting myself on the back for it. One of my most standout notes rather is that like it's evident right away what an asset David Gordon Green's eye for direction and photography does for this movie and for this mythology.
Immediately.
Whew.
Like immediately.
How he's got like he's got, there's so much suspension of disbelief that you have to do, which I feel like when you hear contrarians picking apart the movie, suddenly it's always like, well, would he really do that? It's like, none of this would really happen.
None of this.
This is a movie.
Yeah, none of
like,
this.
Enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Like this is a story, and this one is especially telling there's a lot of layers to this fucking story. So like he's pulling this mask out, and all you see is Michael twitch, like a tiny little twitch, but then the camera starts circling all the other patients as they're getting louder and louder, and then it cuts to this zoom that's coming from overhead on top of Michael. So it's like you are being thrown around in all these different directions on top of what is a literal chessboard of crazy psychopaths. It was so effective when it's just like, say something, and then the opening comes in. It's like, oh, he's begging us to say something. This is what we're going to say for the next hour and a half. This is what we're going to say about Halloween, about Michael Myers, about all of our ideas for this. It was just like, it's such a hit the ground running kind of moment that like it was so perfect.
And what I love about it too is like it started off, now that I could look at it in retrospect, but like Sartan with like the foreshadowing being like, Loomis was the only one who saw him in the wild. This guy has not, he's not the person in here that he was out there. And from there you kind of just feel him like salivating, just wanting to see him out in the open. That's why
the fact that he even says the wild.
Yeah,
it's
the
like,
wild.
Oh, so you're like a Richard Attenborough for serial killers, huh?
Yeah,
guy?
for sure, right? Because that's why he like let these people go in. He wanted them to like. It's like he wanted them to antagonize him enough to have this reaction to where he could just be like, yeah, he's like just fucking pull this out. Because the girl looks back at him when the main podcaster was like pulling out the mask, and like Sartan was just like, yeah, let him just keep going.
That he borrowed from his friend, because that's what happened.
Yeah,
it's like right away, like, all right, I shouldn't pick shit apart. They're just letting me know right away.
But so then goes in to the credits, and you're back. You're back in Haddonfield, and it's fucking great. I mean, the pumpkin was a little weird. I don't know what was up with that. It was like,
I thought it was a fun choice. It was weird that it wasn't like some like 9 Inch Nails video, like rewind of a rotting pumpkin, and yet it looked like you're inflating a fucking beach ball.
That's what it was.
That's what it was.
Yeah, that's what it was that like threw me off.
This is not how a pumpkin disintegrates. Like, what is up?
And then from there, we jump into the movie. So what do you have on your list over there?
Where do we go to? What I don't know what scene the movie opens on. Like, my first note after, the talking about the cold open is how we go from Smith's Grove to this familiar kind of, credit scene with the pumpkin and the carpenter font, and it's like perfectly stated, like, we're inhabiting Haddonfield, like, kind of right away.
Yeah, because I think it went to the kids after, like, they were talking about right, weren't they like Laurie's granddaughter?
My first note is about, and maybe we can just start with this scene, is that is when the podcasters are going to meet Laurie.
Okay, yeah.
Like, they, we've seen them go to the sanitarium,
yep.
Seen how they address Michael, seen what it takes for them to get through to Michael. Like, they have to go through the lobby, they have to go through the doctor, they have to go through all these movements, but yet they say, like, Sartain says, Michael was aware, he watched you come in, so we know that about him. And then we see the many walls it takes to get the podcasters face to face with Laurie, and yet how she's just standing there and watching them come in. Like, it's immediately setting up the dyad of, like, this is 40 years removed. This is where the two of them are, and the rest of the movie is going to be us bringing them together.
Yeah.
And how, like, the podcaster, the guy, I forget the names of the podcasters.
Yeah, me too.
Once again, they're recording their their ADR in their car, which is like, come on, guys. And podcasters, you got $3,000 to pay somebody? Like, I don't think that's how the podcast economy works.
Nah. I could tell you now.
Yeah, right? Like, you gave me the Red River Podcast corporate card, and, like, I took it easy, but, you only get this chance once in your life. But the dude podcaster, when they're trying to get into Laurie's house, he's like, we've traveled a long way, after we've seen him needling Michael and, like, say something. And it takes the female podcaster to say, like, just give her the money and we'll go in.
Absolutely.
It's like her acknowledgement of her silent acknowledgement, more specifically, of Laurie's trauma as another woman versus a man who's, like, forcing his will. I came a long way. I flashed this mask to this guy. Sets up what really is the best thing about the movie to me, like the cosmic slop of the metaphor and subtext. This movie to me just, like, redefined, because as slasher fans, we know that sexual dynamics and gender dynamics figure heavily in, like, the horror trope. And, like, for this movie to examine and bring those kind of things to the front, define them, redefine them. It's almost as if Halloween 78 and Halloween 2018 are just the bookends of that era of slasher, where it's like Halloween 1 started it. What I have written down here is Halloween 78 is about the killer behind you. Halloween 2018 is about the killer standing in front of you.
I like the angle that they were shooting for. Obviously, that wasn't going to be a plot point, but I like when he was like, they obviously had the plan. It's like, let's go try to get a reaction from Michael, and if nothing happens, let's get to Laurie. And they were trying to do like one of those like Geraldo fucking things where they like
roadmaps.
Yeah, it's like, it's like you just sit there. It's like, all right, Laurie, we're gonna sit here. We're gonna have Michael on this side, and it just seemed like like something that a normal journalist would do. Like they're trying to get this story.
Yeah, they're trying to just nag her into like doing what they want her to do, which is ultimately for their podcast.
Oh, absolutely,
and
yeah.
For his satisfaction. I mean, this is like playing to a true crime conscious audience where it's like you're familiar with these kind of podcasts. You're familiar with maybe like this archetype of host who's like getting into the mind of the serial killer, but she's like sitting there. She's the victim. It happened to her. Her life was destroyed because of it. Yet here's this guy who claims to want to help her and help Michael.
Oh, yeah.
But he's really just prodding her and going, hey, shouldn't you cope with it like this? Shouldn't you cope with it like that? Like, I want to understand Michael. And she's like, Michael's not, the whole first 78, they keep referring to him as the boogeyman.
Yeah.
And in this, like, the first time you hear that word is he's like, do you still believe in the boogeyman? And she's like showing you that she's come around. She's like, Michael's a guy who killed like a bunch of my friends, and you want to figure him out, and you're willing to do that by like reopening my wounds. Like, what the fuck are you trying to do? It's a movie about trauma. It's about generations of the Strode family having to deal with this one night where this one guy who feels no remorse and no motivation just like derailed her entire fucking life. And here's the first evidence of why she's, holed up in that house. It's like you've got an entire society structure telling you how to cope, telling you what you should do. And, something that Danny McBride brought up, I listened to, the Halloween Unmasked episode, a podcast episode to get some of this research and stuff. And he was like, in 78, after that Halloween, Laurie Strode probably had to go to school the next day. Like, they didn't deal with trauma. They didn't deal with PTSD. There was no guidance. It was like they really thought hard about what 40 years would be like for this woman and what it would do so specifically. Like, and yet here we're first evidenced with it by these podcasters who are just like really like the villainous characters of this movie, at least in the first act.
Yeah, I think the female podcaster is like a little bit like easier than the male one, but all of a sudden, like, as these like set pieces start coming out and the characters, you already realize that like this is like the best setup of any of the Halloweens that have, maybe H2O had a really good setup like this where it had a bunch of characters, but this was already well thought out. It was better than 2 as far as like character development, 4, 5, 6, like all of these, that you could tell.
Better than Halloween 6. Wow.
Well, as far as character development, I'm just saying, because you have these, like you said, the generations. So you have Allison, the granddaughter, and then later on we see Laurie's daughter, Karen, who kind of acts the way someone should be acting when their mom's an alcoholic. She had this traumatic thing happen to her, but it really was 40 years ago. And sure, it was a fucked up thing, but like 40 years ago, like if you're a kid, you're thinking like, man, Mom, just get over it. I want you to stop drinking and stop fucking talking about Michael.
Yeah, my life. What about my life? Like, you're protecting me from your life, basically.
Yeah.
But these are the years that I'm supposed to be living my life. So, of course, like, your overprotection is what pushes her away. I think, like, we find out, I don't know if this is right when Karen pops on screen. I'm pretty sure it is, but it's like we know just how distant Karen is by the fact that it's Halloween and she's wearing a Christmas sweater.
I didn't notice that. That's good.
That was a point. Like that was a conscious choice. That was like, she is not about this shit. She has had to, like, you know, it comes on at a later scene at Karen's home where, you know, Laurie invades and shows how vulnerable her house is. That, like, you ever hear you ever read the Onion headline that says "Apology Screamed"? It's like,
oh yeah,
she's yelling at her mom, "The world is full of peace and love," and it's like, wow, Judy Greer's performance in this movie,
she was great.
Like, really,
wasn't she?
Really communicates.
Wasn't she great?
Incredible, incredible.
Yeah, I thought she was really
like
good.
She so effectively communicated. Like, I am yelling this at you. Like, I'm convincing myself of all these things. I had to raise myself and create my entire, you know, belief system. My entire understanding of the world was up against you rather than guided by you. It's so effective.
And, you know, one of my questions that I have is basically who, like, in the whole movie, do I think was the actual best actor? And I picked Judy Greer. I think she did the best job. Like, if someone was going to get an Oscar for this performance or this movie, I think she definitely did the best job out of all of them.
I agree totally. I mean, my favorite, I was, you know, I didn't want to say it because it's like the obvious pick, but it's like, I do think what Jamie Lee Curtis does with Laurie Strode in this movie is just fucking remarkable. But Karen's performance is Laurie's performance relied very heavily on whoever played Karen being, like, really tuned in, and like, it might not have been the same way the other way around. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis needed Judy Greer to do that good of a job.
So what do we think of the vibe so far of the movie? You know, like, as it goes on, you know, we go from Smith Grove to, you know, Laurie's house, and then from there we meet up with the family, and all these things start coming, you know, around. We meet Laurie's son-in-law, who's definitely like the one comedic part of the thing, where he's like
Toby Huss. I love that dude.
I was like, I'm like sitting there watching the movie the first time. I'm like, did he just say he got yogurt on his dick? I'm like, what the fuck? I was very confused.
It was such a weird choice.
Yeah, but it was
such a weird choice. You're so right. Like, I had to kind of, like, go backwards and be like, why did he fucking say
but
that?
it what I like about it wasn't overpowering. Like, if you watch 5 with those fucking Keystone Cops, it wasn't like, when, like, anytime they try to crowbar humor into any of these movies before this, it was very forced. He just seemed like a guy who was just, like, kind of like jokey and, like, funny. And this was obviously before all the tension build up. So, like, it wasn't like that overpowering. I'm like, oh, maybe this guy's just, you know, he's just like a funny guy. Even when they have dinner later on, you know, he's telling, like, Allison's boyfriend that he smoked peyote with his dad, and all that other stuff.
Which is when we see Cameron react like he's super embarrassed by that.
We see who?
He's still driving home like, oh, we trip balls in the forest.
Yes, yeah.
That's what you got to love about, you know, having these guys behind the helm of this movie. It's like you said, like, you're totally right. All the other films, like, any levity felt so forced and just, like, hammered in poorly. And it's like, these guys they know funny. They're like, they probably just know a funny actor that they can say, just, all right, ad lib, do whatever you want, and let it happen naturally.
Yeah, because
just get talented people in the room, and, like, the comedy will happen.
So another cool thing that I loved was basically when you see a shot of Allison in the beginning, and she's sitting in her classroom, and it was kind of like an homage to the first Halloween, where Laurie's sitting in her classroom, only when she looks outside of her classroom window she sees Michael, but this time Allison sees her grandmother Laurie, and then after that, like, I guess she goes outside and meets her, and the $3,000 that the podcasters give her, she gives to the granddaughter. She was just like, you know, she's like, I can't take this, and she's like, yeah, just fucking take it, go to Mexico, do something, you know.
Yeah, and she's like, your mom will freak. but like that doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
Like we see that like this fan service moment, like the fan service in this movie is done so well that it's like, why do we see Laurie looking in the classroom window? Like David Gordon Green knows that we know what that tableau is, like looking out the window, seeing Myers in the first one, that this is like a very important visual. And it's like, oh, we see her out there, like her grandmother has been haunting her life with Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Like she is essentially, I mean, you know, the granddaughter is 2 generations removed. So like what she knows of Michael Myers is represented only by the life that her grandmother leads. And she wants her to be a part of her family, but she can't bring her mother and her grandmother together. And when you hear Laurie go like, go to fucking Mexico, it'll freak your mom out. It's like, oh, this is like very real, dealing with, you know, the generations of trauma. Like here's the the grandmother trying to live vicariously through her granddaughter. Like, I never got out of here. Like, go to fucking Mexico, like do something, you know, have some fun in your life. But meanwhile, like, it's like she's led this whole life where she pushed her daughter away by being overprotective. So here she is trying to right the scales or whatever by telling her granddaughter to do this. But there's also this kind of like insidious triggering where she's like, your mom will freak. It's like, oh, if I give this money to the granddaughter and say, take it to Mexico, like my daughter's going to have to call me to bitch at me.
Yeah.
You know, like she can't ignore this, you know?
Yeah, that's
And
great.
it's like they've just been communicating through how they deal with these horrible events and the horrible fallout. And that's like just this sad thread that weaves these people together who, for whatever reason, stayed in that fucking town.
Also, the teacher's voice. I don't know if you know who the teacher's voice was in the classroom.
I do, but I'll let you say it because it's fun. Yeah, I know who it is,
Okay.
but I won't. You know,
Yeah.
I want to give you the thrill of saying.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so PJ Souls, you know, once again, you're talking about, you know, fan service, you know, little things like that. You know, you throw it in, and it's not over. You know, you're not being hit over the head with it. Like, you really have to like do your homework and be like, oh shit, that's so cool that she's on there.
Yeah,
just like the reference.
and it's always with a purpose. You know, it's never just like fan service for the sake of it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like they put it in there for a reason. And you know, PJ Souls, man, one of the top 5 ladies of the 80s.
Yeah.
Like legend.
Yeah. So it's cool she got in there, you know.
Yeah.
But then so moving on.
Well, I have a question for you, if you don't mind me throwing in like a fun one in the beginning.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering, you know, because like when I heard that Danny McBride was going to be writing a Halloween movie, I thought like, there's no way he's not putting himself in this movie in like some kind of role.
Oh.
And I wonder if you thought that there was a place for Danny McBride in this movie, like if there was like a character that you thought like he would.
I don't think so.
His particular place could fit in well.
No. Maybe after I saw Arizona, I would have said, yeah. But that was a dark comedy. You know, I'm glad he didn't, because I feel like it really would have taken me out of it. Like, I really do. Like, I just... Like, maybe with makeup on or something, like when Wes Craven was like... you know, when Wes Craven was like the janitor dressed up as Freddy in Scream, where you're just like, oh, that's weird. I'm like, oh shit, that's Wes.
Oh, so like a cameo.
Yeah, like a cameo type thing where you just like, but it just, yeah, I'm glad they didn't. You know, I mean, who knows what's gonna happen with Kills and Halloween Ends? Maybe they'll be in there. But I'm kind of
Halloween Kills. That teaser is like the only teaser that has ever affected me that hard. Like, what a perfect thing to put out.
That was great for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so moving along, you know, you meet up with Allison's boyfriend, his really annoying fucking friend, who's definitely my least favorite character of the whole movie.
Ugh.
Right?
Oh yeah.
I don't know, right? Who else do we hate other than?
I mean, it's funny because you'd posed the question, you know, before this, like, who's your least favorite character, and I feel like you might have engineered that question because it's like, oh, like there are some, you know, no spoilers, but there are some characters that are really divisive and are really hated in this story, and yeah, like you put it that way, it's like, well, he was the fucking he was the douchiest guy on screen, like, and that was his only purpose.
Yeah, and I feel like if anyone kind of, you know how like every horror movie has that one overactor, and you're kind of like, oh my god, I can't wait for this person to get killed.
Oh yeah, the costume guy in Friday the 13th Part 3.
Okay, yeah, exactly. I just saw a movie.
Why won't they kiss me? I'm doing all this terrible magic.
I just saw a movie called Hellfest, which I thought was great. And that movie, same thing. Like just recently, I'm watching this girl. I'm like, this girl has been annoying the whole fucking movie. I can't wait for someone to fucking take her out. And that kid just, there was something about him that just definitely just bothered me.
Well, I saw like he's got an interesting analog, and what'll come up later with Dr. Sartain, who I feel like would be the easy answer as far as like who's the worst character, because that was like a really bold choice to let that guy
the Sartain thing,
role.
Right?
Yeah,
that was interesting, right? Because
a strange choice.
Yeah, okay, so we'll get there. Let's do so. One of my favorites.
Well, this kid, when he's fighting, I'm just going to put this out there. Like, when we meet Cameron and his shitty friend, it's like we see his shitty friend like really desperately trying to be like, the important relationship in Cameron's life, when he's like, talking about his girlfriend, and this fat fucking friend of his is so disappointed that they're not doing a costume together, and he's just touching him and wrestling him, and it's like it really sets up this like rather than, it doesn't even set up, it's already been set up, like it really reinforces this like we're gonna fucking examine like all of the horniness that's in the horror trope, but instead of just like, show your tits and get stabbed with a machete like that 1-to-1, they're really gonna like, examine all that shit. And I found that super interesting, that they got away with metaphor that easily and that quickly, I wonder if that like came out at all for you.
No, I mean, that one didn't hit me, but I'm glad.
Once again, what I love about this movie is like
I'm glad you took it.
I read deep into it. Like this whole fucking movie is just many layers.
Well, that's why I wanted to get the episode in, because I wanted to hear all those layers. So moving into like one of my favorite scenes, I picked 3 favorite scenes, and one of them is just the transfer. So
my favorite too, definitely.
Yeah, like the transfer of Myers from Smith Grove. Because Sartain was talking about that. I guess that we're going to move into some like shithole. And I really like the angle that was taken here, where he put himself in this position. I mean, obviously I don't really know how it happened, or if he let him go or something. But I mean, that must have been what Sartain did. So you see,
it's at least implied.
Yeah, it's implied, and you see like the son talking to like his dad in the car before they come across. It was such a funny
favorite character in the movie is that kid.
Okay, right. So when you're talking about
love that kid,
when you're talking about reading deep into something, like he's talking about like he didn't want to go fishing, he wanted to go dancing. So obviously they're having this thing that like maybe the son's trying to come out to his dad or something, like
Dude, can I have like a fucking sidebar here just to hammer down on like how much I love this kid and how much this works? Like
hammer.
I'll try and blaze through it, but like I really, really identified with it, and especially after rewatching the movie. So that scene comes after their exchange at the restaurant, where and first of all, like we'll talk about this afterwards, but that Allison calls Lori grandmother, I couldn't get over it. Every time she said grandmother.
Oh, right?
Like,
I fucking hate it.
Who calls her grandmother?
Yeah.
Is grandmother coming?
Grandmother? Yeah.
I'm sorry, is this a grim fairy tale? Like, what the fuck are we working with?
Not even grandma.
Yeah, grandmother. It's like, come on. It just seemed weird. It was right there with the, peanut butter on my penis.
No,
but
you're right.
They have Lori show up. They have this intensely powerful transfer scene where, like, you're hearing tape of Loomis talk about Michael. You're seeing the podcasters exchanging information with each other. You see Lori sitting outside, like trying to handle it. Like, so much of this movie is about control in the face of trauma. Like, Laurie has been trying to control everything that happens, but when she sees the bus that Michael's on, man, she crumbles. She crumbles right away. And she goes to seek solace in her family, which is like.
But before we get there, remember, like, a cool scene was like the image of Michael, obviously in our mind coming up to the car. I thought that was pretty fucking heavy too.
Oh yeah,
right. Like you
totally,
see, like
totally,
like driving away. But go ahead.
Which is kind of like a throwback to H2O. I realized, because they did a lot of that in H2O, where like Michael appeared. In like a shadow or reflection, and he wasn't really there. But like, so they follow this up. She seeks solace with her family. She goes to meet them at the restaurant. They have this huge exchange. We saw what control Laurie wanted to exert over Michael and how it broke her down. So she goes to her family and her daughters right away with the harsh judgments, and like she's telling her how to act and how to sit and how to do this. And then even when they're through that, Karen says, "Oh, can we just press the reset button?" Which is like a classic gaslighting thing to say, where it's like, not only do I want to tell you how to act and how to deal, but I also want to tell you when it's time to stop talking about that and focus on something else. Like, this is Karen trying to do her control. And then we hear from Karen. She's telling Allison about her childhood. She's saying what she had to deal with, how she had to grow up, beat by beat, as if we're meant to believe that that's the first time that's happening. And we see just like, oh, they've had an entire lifetime of this fraught relationship, of this inability to communicate, and Karen has had to push so hard to get through it. And then we come to this scene where this little kid is talking to his fucking stereotypical bumpkin dad, and he is so mature and so effectively just goes, "Hey dad, like, I really love you and I love spending time with you, but I gotta make time for dance." And it's like, wow, he just did what Karen wanted to do over the last 40 years and did it in 30 seconds.
That's a heavy thing right there. Yeah, for sure.
He said, did he not say it so well? Like, did you not hear that kid and go, man, I have never heard somebody speak that succinctly before in my life?
I was thinking of the age difference. I'm like, that's not your grandpa? Like, you look like so much older, right? And yeah. But you're right. That's a good angle. And then like what I love about that too is total homage, I feel, to Halloween 1, when you see the escape patients all kind of like walking in their white t-shirts, and you're like, holy shit. So then, and what an imagery alone, just like how well photographed that is, of the dark, like, Midwestern highway, and just these white sheets kind of like waving in the wind with these kind of vacant heads bobbling around in them. And then you just see the bus turned over, and the kid, once again, super mature. He calls 911. He tells them what's up. He grabs the gun when he walks out of the car, which is like a classic horror mistake. If we were watching like a stereotypical slasher, that kid would not have taken a gun with him. He would have just been like, "Dad, what's going to," it would have happened then. But he winds up shooting a doctor by accident, screams "fuck." Like, that's how a kid would fucking react. Yeah.
But as he gets more and more afraid, he stops yelling "dad," and he just yells "daddy." And it's like you see him, all that maturity that is literally the only thing we know about this character, just disappear, because this whole movie is like what fear does to people. And that's where the real horror steps in. Like, those Halloween sequels are not scary. Like, and it's more than just, that it's Laurie's brother. Like, yeah, that definitely takes away the scare factor, but it's also just like you're exploring his bloodline, and there's all this stuff that kind of just makes it a procedural slasher rather than a horror movie. And in this one, you can hear, David Gordon Green when he talks about it. He's like, this is a fun little fact, right? So Carpenter, a big inspiration for Halloween for him was what he saw as a kid, seeing like scenes from the civil rights movement, seeing like all the, atrocities happening to protesters and stuff like that. And this movie, there's, Halloween 78 drew a lot from that, as far as like making the horror real and bringing it home. David Gordon Green was in 10th grade in the high school that Pearl Jam's Jeremy was written about.
Oh, wow.
So, like, the Jeremy who killed himself was David Gordon Green's classmate.
That's
and
crazy.
that was like the predecessor to the school shooting movement.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I hate to call it a movement, but it's unfortunate that it's like it's just become like a part of living in fucking America.
Valid.
So there's this very real world, very driven home horror that they are like adept, like, you know, Carpenter went to a psych ward to do research for his Michael Myers. David Gordon Green went to death row, and he's like, it's a great quote. I wish I knew it verbatim, but he's like, death row is not filled with giant monsters screaming at you. It's little guys in glasses who are studying you, and that's way creepier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, he's really bringing it home.
And that's what I love about, like, the character, you know, what the origin of Michael Myers was before he turned into something else, which is what I think this movie
like
brings.
Big hulking Superman.
Yeah, which is what I think they bring back in this movie. That's why I like the brutality of him actually killing that kid.
Holy shit, dude! That's in my notes right here. Killing that kid is insanely brutal.
Listen, I gauge a movie by how far they're willing to go, and I'll never forget. Like, remember the movie God Bless America, Bobcat Goldthwait?
Yeah, this is probably the moment when I turn that movie off. I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right? So they throw the baby up in the air, and I was like, holy shit. I'm like, you just shotgunned the baby in the air. I'm like, that's fucking, like, you really, like, you're going for it.
And they drag it out. Like, the kid is slowly walking around. He encounters the cop. He encounters the doctor in the overturned bus. He gets all the way back to the car. And then, like, Michael doesn't stab him. Michael just crushes his fucking head, and we watch him do it. It makes it real and frightening. It's like, you know, you watch slasher movies, they tell you, like, okay, this guy smokes a joint, he's going to get killed. These two people have sex, they're going to get killed. This is what the real fear of Halloween 78 was, and what's been missing from so many others is that, like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just you are being victimized by an unstoppable force. And that's what's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, and someone who they really made human again, you know, showing his scar, like, you know, a quick peek of it.
I wanted to ask you about that, how you felt about that. Like, if you
eye?
were a fan of, like, if you were more like, if you wanted to see a Michael that was like that super strength Michael, like the Rob Zombie giant fucking Undertaker Michael, or if you like to see him with a paunch belly and you could see the knife wound in his neck from the knitting needle, like all that shit.
I love all that. I love all that because it's still someone who, you know, it's like a realistic thing. It's like, okay, this fucking doctor's a lunatic, kind of. I don't know exactly what he did, but he, you know, Sartan definitely made it so he can get out. Maybe it got a little out of hand, but he was like, fuck it, I'm going to ride with it anyway.
Yeah, it's what he wanted. Like, he's trying to feel like, well, you know.
Yeah, he's trying to.
The doctor kind of reveals who he's going to be later. Like, we're forced to question it at this point in the movie.
Yeah, because you're thinking for sure. But I like that. Like the Rob Zombie one, like he looked like a wrestler, or like he was in like Slipknot, and I was just like, this is like with like the fucking like the sound effects. I'm like, what is this? It just sounds like karate chopping.
He just breaks
people.
out some giant kettle drums and starts jumping around on them.
You know, this is dark, and I love it. And then he takes the car and he's gone. And then I guess what Hawkins is the guy's name, the sheriff who comes, and I guess they kind of crowbarred him in like the folklore where they were like because I guess like
he was there that night or whatever.
Yeah, because so I was watching it for the 5th time with my girlfriend, and she's like, why did they never mention like whatever? And I was like, oh no, this is like a continuation from the first one. So he never even got away. Like, so basically Loomis shoots him, he falls, and I guess they made it seem like he maybe got a house or two away before they captured him.
They had an original beginning. Get this. I'm actually really glad it didn't happen.
Oh, the CGI.
You know about this?
Yeah, right?
Well, the original beginning to this movie was they were going to retcon completely the ending of Halloween 78, and Loomis was going to get strangled to death, and Laurie was going to shoot Michael.
Okay, but I didn't Carpenter.
Yeah.
Carpenter was like, "Don't do that," right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they went and thank God, because that would have been.
Carpenter's the best.
No way.
Carpenter.
That's like, David Gordon Green, you do not have to fucking show us your dick and balls like that quickly into this movie.
No, yeah. Carpenter was like, don't do that. I forget the actual like phrase, but he's like, don't do that.
They like went so far as like they built a set for it. Like it was gonna happen.
It was gonna happen. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad it did.
But like, thankfully they didn't, and they gave us like a human Michael, like because what's Super Predator Michael? Yeah, he's scary, he can fuck you up, but it's not this Michael Myers. It's not about his strength or even like his desire. It's just the fact that he's, like you said, like willing to go there. Like we're not afraid of him because people can overpower him. He's just a guy. Like we see that countless times in the movie, but it's like he's willing to just. There's no forethought, and that's what's scary. Like he'll just grab a kid and mush his fucking head. Like his willingness is what we're afraid of. His willingness to kill, not his ability to do it.
All right, so now he's out and about, and everyone's figuring out they're like, holy shit, they're like 40 years later. One of the people, the escapee is Michael Myers, and like that random black dude in the cowboy hat. I'm like, what is this? It's like,
see, now we're getting to my answer to my previous question. I wish that fucking guy was Danny McBride.
Oh, okay. That what?
I wish that fucking guy was Danny McBride, because not only do I feel like he could have really inhabited that character, and he was like just a little bit more than a cameo. But this first exchange he has with Hawkins, I really don't get how this actor portrayed this character. He's like, holy shit, Michael Myers has escaped. And then within one exchange, he's laughing and go, oh, what are we going to change Halloween? I'm like, are you a fucking psychopath?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you stop on a dime like that?
Yeah, like he was acting like he was in the movie Gummo. I was just like, I don't know what, like, I'm like, are you for real?
Premier Gummo expert Sam.
Are you for real? Are you joking with me? Like, it was just like so. I couldn't tell if he was doing like shtick. But that would have been funny because I feel like in some ways it was Danny McBride,
right? Like in the cowboy hat, he doesn't really know how to act. He's like the mayor in Jaws, and there's like. Michael Myers, I don't think it's a stretch to say that he's a Jaws analog,
How about
Jaws is just a shark. Like, you could kill a fucking shark, but it's big, and it's going to come after you, and it's not going to be thinking about anything, and that's what's fucking scary about it.
How about that scene with Sartan when they get him? And I think it was the black dude in the cowboy hat. He was like, all right, just sit still, or something like that. And
oh, yeah.
He was just like, I am sitting still. Why would I? But who wrote that? Wasn't that like the weirdest thing? Like, was that like
very weird?
I'm like, is this like his Jackie Mason impersonation or something? Is this like the chicken soup fucking? Or whatever.
Yeah, is this going to suddenly become like a two-hander odd couple comedy between these two clowns?
Yeah, it was so weird. But all right.
Yeah, very weird.
So at this point, you're sitting in the movie theater, right? Like, yeah, we're probably at like the 40-minute mark. How you feeling so far?
So far, at this point in the movie, I definitely have more questions than answers. Like,
okay,
there's a lot of, once again, like I very quickly identified with a lot of the subtext that they were trying to bring out of this movie, that they were like, this is about Laurie's trauma. This is a Strode family drama thriller, not a Michael Myers horror slasher movie, and it's also like it's seeking to redefine the gender norms of not a franchise, but like an entire genre that relies very heavily on gender tropes and stereotypes and like, the occasional brutalization of women, but like this, idea of the final girl as well. So it's always been so confusing. And this is really setting up to like seeing what the strengths of Halloween 78 were, where none of the girls in that original movie were identified as virginal. It was just what we gleaned from their characters, because their characters were treated with kindness and with care, and we learned about them. They were personalities. They made sense, so that when they got killed, we were afraid for them, and we were afraid because we knew people like them. And then after that, it just became, it was more about the killer. We were learning about Michael's bloodline and his this and that. Like, we're trying to, it's like he's the protagonist of this movie, and the victims are just like so much fucking deli meat offered up for him to slice, so that, the audience bloodlust can be satiated. And I mean,
that's basically, that's basically with anything. Like, once you start getting into, like, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like, once you start getting into, like, those franchises with those numbers, it's just kind of like, like Final Destination was cool. Like, the first two, I was like, oh, it's cool.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'm like, oh, I'm just watching to see how everyone dies,
Yeah, and I feel like every time a new one of those, or like a new Saw was coming out, I was just always surprised, like, oh, they're up to this number already? Like, it's always a surprise.
I got to tell you, I love Saw. There's something about every Halloween I was there, and somehow these guys that never came in, so it was never written to go that far. But every year before Halloween, like on Halloween, whatever 12 months, they had to basically extend the story to see how long they could keep it. And I'm thinking, like, you guys definitely somehow managed to keep, everyone employed for 8 years with all these stories. And there was
the cottage industry.
There was actually I think it was 4 and 5, if I remember correctly, that went on at the same time. And I thought that was a really cool twist. So at the end of 5,
interesting things.
Yeah, at the end of 5, like, you see that it crossed over, like, you see the end of 4 again, but like from a different angle. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I've never seen that before.
The Saw movies after the first one, right? I never saw any of the ones after that. And then, I was a big fan of this last Watchmen miniseries on HBO, so much so that I was listening to the...
I heard it's great.
I loved it. I mean, it was aimed directly at me. But
What about Love... Oh, go ahead.
So they had a companion podcast where, Damon Lindelof, who's, we all know that this guy has created some, divisive but very relatively important content, and
for sure
he's talking about Watchmen, which is like he it's this prestige piece, like it's this very highbrow adaptation of this beloved IP. And on, I forget what episode and I forget what element of Watchmen he was talking about, but he's like, yeah, I basically applied and I do this in a lot of my work where I applied the Saw 2 scenario, and I'm like, okay, what the fuck road are we about to go down? And
yeah, me too.
Apparently in Saw 2, it's somebody, like a protagonist is trying to find somebody or save somebody who's been like kidnapped, is being held prisoner, and it turns out the whole time that they were in a box next to that protagonist.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you'd be... now that you know that, you can pick through a lot of my most celebrated work and see that I'm just like dropping a Saw 2 in there.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
But it's like, these are these movies that rely very heavily on these devices. It's like a lot of times you get this out of Stephen King adaptations, where it's like you have this interesting thing that you want to accomplish, and the movie is just, or the story is just reverse engineering events to lead you to that, eventuality.
Moving along with the movie, I'm going to say the podcasters really found their demise quicker than I thought they were going to. I thought they were going to be a little bit more, part of the story until they get to the gas station. And I'm thinking, like, I think I kind of remember this from the trailer, and it played out. And that's another one of my favorite scenes. Like, there's... they show up, and the female goes to the bathroom, and then from there it just takes off, man.
Another thing from H2O where, like, we encounter Michael in a public bathroom.
Yeah. So that's what my my girlfriend said. That she's like, didn't this happen in H2O? I was like, yes, it did. And also in Halloween 4, there was kind of like that, where he like kills the mechanic and takes his his like outfit.
And dude, how great was that? Like Michael in the background of those shots. Like, what a fucking brilliant way to photograph that
It's
scene.
fucking great.
Like he's just out of focus in the back, but you just see him in that white hospital just walk right in, and then you see him just demolishing the guy in the fucking garage. It's so scary. It's like this is what every like Michael Bay horror movie got wrong. Like that is what's fucking scary.
Jesus Christ, they sure did.
Yeah, well, one of the things, I guess I should say.
And you see like the jaw of the guy ripped off, which makes sense because when he gets to the bathroom stall, one of like my favorite scenes is when he like reaches over when she's like, someone's in here, and he throws the teeth on the floor, and I'm thinking like that's just vicious.
That was like
that's
the first
brutal.
scene of the first trailer that I saw, and I was like, "Whoa!" And I mean, it's brilliantly done. Holy shit! Like, and you're in that girl's shoes in that moment. You're in her fucking, you're in her pulled down panties on the toilet at that moment. Like. You're sitting there, and there's a hand just dropping bloody teeth on the floor in front of you.
Teeth.
Holy fuck.
You have nowhere to go. And I thought to myself, this is, like, moments like this bring you back to, like, being, like, terrified. You're like, where some of these sequels really missed, and they're cartoonish, and it's like, all right, I'm going to do this and that. This was just, it took its time. It was like very deliberate and mean-spirited, but it just didn't feel rushed. Like everything that he did was like true to form. Mm-hmm. And then the male podcaster comes in. I'm thinking like, wait, how are they going to get out of this? Because I figured that they were somehow going to be involved in the story.
Well, they were going to have to persevere at some point.
Yeah, at some point. And they're kind of like the Pandora's box that they opened came back to bite them,
Well, it's interesting what happens with the podcasters' like role in the story, not necessarily like them as characters themselves, because you have, there's always these questions about what kind of killer Michael is. And again, this is a movie that comes out during like, once again, we can assume that this is like a true crime conscious audience. It's a phenomenon these days, true crime. And so the struggle for so many to define Michael as a killer, like, they keep calling him a serial killer, but I feel like in this movie they make these very little decisions to show that he's a serial killer. He's also a spree killer. He's also a random killer. He also kills people he knows. He makes choices about who to kill and who not to kill. If he was just a blind force stabbing whoever's in his way, he didn't have to go find the podcasters. He wanted to. He chose to go locate them. Maybe it's just because they had his mask. Maybe it's that and something else. But like they were targeted by him, and part of the fascination, part of the role that the podcasters are playing is like they are representing a part of like the public. They're sympathizing with the killer. They're using Laurie as a prop, like victim blaming, gaslighting, poking holes in a woman's narrative for like the trauma that she's had to endure, negging her about the after effects, like, you had failed marriages, drug problems. Like they might as well just be saying like, what were you wearing that night with Michael? Like you were asking for it, But yet they want to get inside Michael's head, and they want to understand him. He's a puzzle that they want to figure out, And then he shows up, and it's like, here's a handful of teeth. Hey, guy, here's your face meeting the wall. That's the end of your fucking education.
Yeah.
And like,
when you break it down like that, it's very satisfying, because they did bring up all that stuff, the drug addiction, like the failed marriages, all that stuff, and after watching it so many times, you're like, okay, this is the ball you started rolling, and you got involved, and
this is what happens when you're trying to understand this ununderstandable violence when, instead what you should be doing is focusing on like the victims and their narratives and what they have to say. And like, that's where you can really get insight. But what you want to do is you want to be the man that cracks Michael Myers and figures it out. Like, what I meant earlier about the role that the podcasters were playing, I think that like the role that they were playing in the story as this kind of metaphor for, the desire to figure out Michael so that you could feel like above him, like you figured him out or whatever. I feel like that gets overtaken by the Doctor's evolution. He's the natural story predecessor. Once the podcasters are dispatched of, now we're suddenly getting like, oh, well, here's the medical scientific side of this same kind of attention, where it's like, I'm willing to use the victim as a prop. I'm willing to literally point Michael like a cannon in her direction, just so that I could figure out what makes him tick. And the Doctor, I'm just going to come right out and say a big thing that I've had to say a lot of times, because I know the Doctor is kind of hard to stomach in a lot of ways. And I just fucking put it down like this. All right. We're talking about a movie redefining sexual dynamics. Michael Myers fucks. Okay. He is fuck energy. That dude penetrates people. The Doctor, he can't fuck. He wants to be Michael. He wants to fuck. Yes. He wants to feel it. You hear him say it. I want to feel what Michael feels. The podcaster wants to understand Michael's mind, but the Doctor, who's been, essentially given the role of monitoring this guy's mind, who went to medical school, who did all of the due diligence scientifically, he just wants to fuck like Michael. And that's why he needs to be there, man. That's why. Because when he confronts Michael just does the same thing to him that he does with the podcasters. And you'll notice that right before Dr. Sartain dies, what does he say? He says, say something. Who else says that? The fucking male podcaster. They are analogs of the same interest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I missed that. Oh, so he said
it's
that?
Right before the cold open. He's holding the mask up to Michael, and he's going, say something.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I thought you meant in the bathroom.
Now, yes.
I thought you meant in the
Not
bathroom.
right before he dies, but he's the other character who says it. They are analogs of the same thing, where this movie isn't just about the trauma that women inherit in society. It's also about the absence of guidance for masculinity and how toxicity and patriarchy victimizes men in a different way, and just as essentially doing what the Doctor's doing. Like, Michael Myers is that fucking penetrative, predatory, lizard brain bullshit, and here's these two guys who think that they have, it figured out, like they want to, inhabit that. It's fucking brilliant, man. It really is.
And what I love about it, too, it's such an antithesis of what Zombie did with his movies, which were the two prior ones, where it's like, oh, it's like my mom was a stripper, this and that, and I'm thinking like, I never want to know more about motive. I never want to know less about motives than in this case. Like everything that you're telling me, I like. Please stop. I don't care. Just take the movie from when he's like 21 and escapes. I don't ever want to hear about a stripper mom. And then you get something like this where it's like, this is who he is. He's pure evil, and that's why Loomis wanted to get rid of him, because no matter which way you think you're going to beat him mentally, or you're going to somewhat crack the code that is Michael Myers, you're not.
Yeah, because there is no code. You're trying to understand it with this criteria that you've created, when in fact it's something beyond your understanding. It's like the same reason why people try to create entire religions to try and justify what happens after you die, because you can't explain it. You don't know. There's no basis for it. Nothing in your human understanding could prepare you for this. And you're approaching it with that kind of limited focus, and that's what is ultimately your complete undoing.
All right, so I want to talk about like a couple other things, just to wrap up here. Another favorite scene of mine is when he's let out into the streets.
Like
Okay.
the tracking shot, like where he's just going from house to
Yeah,
house.
the tracking shot is so fucking cool because you're like, okay, this is like it just follows him, and like it's Halloween, so he doesn't look out of place whatsoever.
Yeah. You even
you know,
hear
he
that
goes,
like couple having that like argument about like, oh, did you leave your keys in the car? While he's just walking past them.
Yeah, just walking past them, doing his thing, grabbing knives, fucking just like killing people. Which I feel like that was like a part two. Like there was like a lady with rollers in part two, if I remember.
Oh shit!
So there was like a
you're
couple.
Right.
Yeah, there was like a nod to that.
Yeah.
And the other girl, like, so in two, where the girl was talking to a friend, and I guess they were like, she was telling her that like, somebody killed these people and escaped, and he's still in like the neighborhood, which is kind of what happened with my favorite kill was when he goes into the house and the girl's closing the blinds and she's looking out the window.
Yep.
Because that's like brutal, like,
Yep.
and she's like hanging up. She's like, "Oh my god, really?" And then she hangs up, and then that's when she starts looking out the window because I guess she found out that I guess he escaped and all this other shit, and the knife right through the throat as he yanked her hair was just brutal.
While she makes the very first movement of trying to protect herself from the information that she just got. Like,
yeah. She's like, oh, let me just close this up right here.
And like it also includes one of the most puzzling elements, which is Michael's deliberate choice not to kill the baby.
The baby,
because
yeah,
he kills
so
the kid. We saw him kill that boy earlier, and before we dig in on that, the scene was originally written where there was no baby. The living room was going to have a husband character that Michael was going to kill. And that actor just didn't show on that day. So they put a crib in there, like, on the fly. And something tells me, like, okay, I strike that. Nothing tells me this. I just want to believe it. When he chooses to acknowledge that baby and just keep walking, there was part of this tracking shot where I thought, like, there was a meta kind of element where he's like, all right, guys, you want a body count? Like, here, we're going to add some numbers to the body count, you sick fucks watching this movie. And when he doesn't kill the baby, something in my head wants to believe that that's them saying, yeah, we know there's going to be a lot of you haters out there bitching and crying about stuff, but you're not even worth stabbing.
Yeah, because if he would have done it, I would have been like, all bets are off. Because, I mean, he did kill that kid, but the kid was just kind of maybe like a teenager.
There was something about, like, maybe the only other thought I had was like, okay, well, maybe Michael remembers, like, maybe the moment when he killed Judith was indeed a turning point moment for him instead of a buildup. And, like, Michael remembers being an innocent baby, but he doesn't have a point of reference for being as old as that kid was.
Yeah.
But it's like, to know that it just happened on the fly was a great relief that I didn't have to continue trying to decipher why that choice was made.
For sure. And I like the fact that the baby didn't even need to be there.
Yeah.
It was just this point in the movie where they were just like, let's throw this in here to make them feel like the audience feels something, and then have him just walk right by.
Yeah, it just creates more questions. It's just them going like, all of you trying to understand why Michael's doing these things, all you franchise devotees who like followed every sequel trying to spell him out, you can't do it. Stop trying. Like, there's nothing to figure out.
What do we think of the scene with the blonde babysitter and the little black kid that was kind of like the comic relief?
I'm glad we're moving ahead to that.
Okay, are we are we okay with him because he was still natural?
I love Julian. I love that kid.
Okay, yeah, he was funny. He was like
he was fucking great. Yeah,
he was like it wasn't too much, like it was just on that line. And the whole scene was great, man. Like he, like he's just
like, I don't know what Alakavam is.
Yeah. Like sitting there, and he was just like,
kid's gonna come over and smoke some weed while I'm clipping my nasty ass toenails.
Yeah, I'm thinking like of all things to make him do during the movie, it's like, all right, you sit here, you clip your toenails, and she's gonna be on the phone
and watch Repo Man. They're watching Repo Man.
Oh, I missed that. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
And he's like complaining about her letting him stay up. Like, you shouldn't be doing this.
Oh, that's so great.
I love that kid, not just for the comic relief, because I do realize like it's one of the hardest things I had to kind of figure out in this movie was his reaction to Michael popping out of the closet, where he's just like, oh shit. I'm like, but then I had to kind of walk it back and be like, that is kind of like a realistic reaction that a kid would have.
I'm kind of with you on that too, because you don't know what's going on. You're like, I mean, how old? He's maybe like 5, 6, 7, 6 probably.
Yeah.
And he's probably like,
and it's like a satisfying movie choice for him to maybe have been like, Vicky, no, but like in reality, that's not what would happen. And we also see like from their exchange when Vicky goes to look and like puts him to bed originally, that like he really cares for her. Like, and he has to watch her die. Like that horror is,
who cares for her too? You, because you remember her name, and I'm just saying blonde girl and little black kid. Like that's, that's my IMDb. But yeah, it just, that was a great effective scene. Like, he's in the house, you don't know where, and then he was like, oh, can you just close the closet? And you're just like, okay. And then
this is the point in the movie where I have to bring our attention to the real villain of this movie, which is whoever cut the fucking trailer.
Yeah.
Holy shit. If that closet moment happened without it being in the trailer, think about how fucking I would have shit myself.
I know. What is the point of that? Like, who?
So stupid.
What is the point of that? Honestly, like, how do you?
Because it's like you're not rolling people into seeing this movie. It's Halloween. You're gonna have people are coming. You know.
Like, what would be like? I would love to talk to the people in charge of making that trailer and be like, you're giving away one of the biggest. Like, is there a bigger? I mean, I'm sure there is a bigger a jump scare, but like that has to be the second, if not third.
Yeah, like but, I mean, I can't give you any one bigger than that, because the fact that like the closet doesn't close at first and then he just pops out after that, like, yo, that would have fucking killed me. And you and we also like it also demolishes something we were talking about last night, where like some of the more effective use of fan service, where like, Julian's afraid of the closet, which is like the closet is a very important set piece to the Halloween franchise. And also Vicky goes outside, and we were talking about this last night, where there's the clothesline full of sheets, to where all of us that have seen Halloween 6 are now subconsciously wondering if Michael's not in the closet, if he's going to come through those sheets.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that, and I love the mom from Better Off Dead.
Yeah,
up in there.
But yeah, him killing Vicky was rough. I love how they flipped the virgin angle and made the dude, like basically the Bob of this movie was the virgin, and he was, really sweet about it, and he got the tattoo, and like, this is the night we're going to remember for the rest of our lives. Like, once again, like them just turning the gender roles in such a non like forced way, in just such a natural this is the way it would be.
That was natural. I mean, and honestly, like, did you listen to a podcast with them explaining this, or do you feel like this is what they were trying to do? Like, in general.
I mean, when I saw the first movie, not the first movie, when I saw this movie for the first time, that is what jumped out at me above all else, was what they were doing with redefining the sexual dynamics of these movies, and how they were using the power of the current culture, like calling attention to these things at that moment. Like, I'm not like a political guy, but like I learned a lot from like all the Me Too movement and how powerful some of those things were. And there's a lot of that in this movie without it feeling forced. It's like it's like this Halloween 78 and Halloween 2018, how I said they kind of bookended the genre, where it's like Halloween 78 was so lightning in a bottle, and it was so about like a group of people that knew each other and like gave a shit about their characters. And then after that, it became exploited, and suddenly, we're like, a big part of it is that like we're always kind of following the male narrative, like that's the story we're following, and this one it's like we're getting a piece of everybody, of how this affects everyone, about how it's real people. Like Cameron by Holla, Cameron was Allison's boyfriend.
Yeah.
By all horror movie rules, that guy should have died.
For
and
sure.
they did that on purpose, I believe. They
Yeah.
made him an asshole. He was drunk. He was high. He kissed another girl. All the things that would have dictated he was going to die.
I mean,
and he didn't.
In all fairness, she was definitely hotter than Allison, but I mean, I guess that's just my problem. But
it's personal.
You're right. You're totally right by all. Like really, and even this girl,
they hit every note.
Even Vicky, the blonde girl, you kind of almost automatically, like, you love their relationship, even though you only get it for like 10 minutes. That you're like, oh, okay, this girl's gonna survive somehow, and she doesn't. You're like, wait,
doesn't.
how the?
And she talks about smoking weed, like, which is a thing that would kill you, but it's also a thing that, like, she shares with this kid, and they have a laugh over. It's like, this is real. This is real people. There's been 40 years in between Michael's fucking 2 sprees, and this is what has happened to this town and these people. Like, you have that scene with the 2 cops, which I love so much, spoiler alert,
the sandwich?
Those cops might be my favorite kill, even though it happens off screen, because, like, that brings us back to playful Michael, and the way they have. He took that one cop's fucking head off and had the other cop hold the flashlight into it, and how Ray is just looking in the cop's car's window and just like, hey, you guys in there?
Yeah, what yeah, totally.
Oof.
I'm like, all right, you know what? Now you need to die, Ray. Just for,
that
for,
was
for
hard. But yeah, they do this exchange with this banh mi sandwich, and like how he knows what his partner's gonna eat. It's like, this is showing you that like Rob Zombie's Haddonfield is disgusting.
Oh.
Everybody's cruel. Everybody's horrible. And like, once again, Rob Zombie is in his movies is failing in a way that this movie is pointing out, where it's like, oh, he's explaining sad Michael and how he was motivated to do these things. It's like, no, you're sympathizing with the wrong fucking person, because you're corrupted by the same things that have been exploited throughout all these years of these stories being told. And here's these 2 cops kind of showing you, like, Haddonfield's this like Leave It to Beaver-y kind of town where everybody knows each other and everybody's sweet and kind to each other. And Michael Myers is this outlier force. You know, the Michael Myers in Rob Zombie's Haddonfield, he was right at home. He fucking belonged there in that awful fucking place with those awful people. This is like Michael Myers is in a town that is not equipped emotionally to deal with that kind of fucking trauma, you know? And he is the fucking trauma bomb being dropped on that town.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's a funny way to put it, to Leave It to Beaver, because that conversation with the banh mi sandwich, you're just like, you're sitting there and you're just like, this is such a like candid moment.
Yeah. And it's actually funny. Like, I remember it being cornier than it was. Like, I watched it this time and I'm like, oh no, this is legit funny.
Well, like I told you, you know, the 5th time I watched it just recently so we could do this podcast, and it might have been my favorite of the times. And my girlfriend and I watched it in the theaters. She didn't really like it, and then the second time around she's like, oh, you know, she likes it more this time. And I don't know why, maybe it just connected more with her, but I just feel like it's a great movie, and obviously why
this movie has
why we're talking about it.
Like, this is one of those movies that rewards watching it multiple times, because the first time you watch it, it's almost, I mean, I was feeling very overwhelmed to the point where the only thing that kind of really jumped out at me, other than just how well photographed and how well, you know, character driven the movie was all these subtextual elements. Like, I was just getting blown away minute by minute by all of these, you know, things that they were exposing. But like, this movie is dense. There's so much character stuff. There's so much subtext stuff. There's so much, I mean, the first time you watch it, it's like overwhelming. Like, you can't take it all in.
Well,
you
also,
kind of have to watch it a few times.
Also, because you're not expecting it from you know, the sequels. You know, you're just thinking like, okay, this is a Halloween movie, and then from there, once you watch it a few more times, you're like, the layers and everyone. Now that I think about it, like everyone that you think is going to survive, because then that brings us to when the sheriff and Sartan meet up and they pick up Allison and they're bringing her. This is like where the twist is. bringing her over to Laurie's house, and you're thinking to yourself, like, okay, this is the good guy. He's going to help Laurie, and somehow this is just going to work out. Then they find Michael, and they run him over. Well, he runs him over, but then
such a great moment.
Sartan, like, loses his fucking mind, and so that was the twist where he just basically stabs Hawkins, and from there everyone's like, what the fuck happened, right? So this is what I thought. I was watching in the theater going like, okay, that's weird. Then
because I know that's a moment that a lot of people had trouble digesting.
Yes. So I'm sitting there watching it, and then he puts on the mask, and I'm thinking like, you know what? I'm like, maybe they killed Michael, and Sartan is just going to continue to try to kill Laurie in the, in the mask.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's
like he's inhabiting Michael finally just by putting the mask on.
Because they just like fucking ran Michael over and they killed him, and like he's just like, you know, and then that's not what happened. But, you know.
Well, the beauty of Hawkins, like that character, because I'm like, you know, here's this character who you pointed it out before, like he gets very little exposition. Like what we know about him is from canon more than this movie.
Yes.
But like, you know, we're confronted with a lot of moments where we learn from the doctor and the podcasters, these people trying to understand Michael. However, Hawkins is the only guy that seems to realize he's got like the Nancy in Nightmare gene, where she's just like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? We just have to kill him. Like, what are you wasting time? He sees Michael. He realizes that Michael is not to be understood. He's not to be figured out. You're not going to get any satisfaction. You just got to fucking end the guy.
That's it.
And then, you know, when I bring up about, you know, Sartain being like, you know, the basic, you know, the analog to erectile dysfunction, which he is in this movie, I don't think it's any coincidence that he stabs Hawkins with that tiny little knife.
Why? Explain that to me, sorry.
It's a dick thing, man.
Oh, it's a dick?
Sartain can't fuck. Sartain can't fuck. Michael Myers fucks. Sartain wants to fuck. He's tired of studying fucking. He wants to do the fucking.
Which is the part of the plot where I was like, oh, I like this. Like, that's why he released him. He wants to see him in the wild. He wants to see him do this thing. And that
he aimed him at Laurie.
Yeah,
we don't know. We'll never know if he wanted to kill Laurie or not, because Dr. Sartain, so much of him getting to Haddonfield relied on the decisions that Sartain made.
Yeah. And I think that's
he's a weapon that he aimed at her.
And I think that's the most effective part for me as far as the story goes. Like, it makes it the most compelling, where it's like, this person made this happen. Yes. And it's super diabolical, which is what made the next scene really weird, which is like that twist happened and Sartain died like, I don't know, 2 minutes later or something. I'm just like,
there's a cool anecdote that Danny McBride reveals.
Okay, because I was just like, okay, I guess that was weird.
Well, it's like we finally learn what Sartain's all about. Like, I realized, like, you know, he could, like, it was perfect for me that he died in that moment, because I was so steeped again in like these metaphorical elements that once like Sartain kind of revealed what his purpose was in the movie, he wasn't really so necessary after that. Okay. And they you know, Danny McBride's talking about, you know, the script process, and he's like, you know, we're going back and forth with how we're dealing with the doctor and what we're going to do, and there was just one part, you know, they're like, we changed that scene so many different ways, so many different times, but there was one piece of stage direction that never changed, and it said, Michael brings boot down on Dr. Sartain's head, brains shit out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, that's true. His brain's fucking shitted out.
Yeah.
But it's no coincidence. Again, if you're looking at this from a metaphorical perspective, it's like this whole movie is men really trying to understand Michael. And the whole point is that Michael is not to be understood.
Not to be understood.
Sartain tried to intellectualize Michael, so his brains got shitted out.
Wow.
You know, like Michael Myers is a fucking Jaws. You know, there's, you know, Dave, the Vicky's boyfriend, has that great moment where he makes the story real by saying like, yeah, but you know, he killed 5 people like 20 years ago. Like, way worse things are happening. I was like, that is a great fucking choice to make.
I have that in my notes, because when that happened, I actually turned to my girlfriend. I was like, you know what? he's right. I'm like, I don't know.
Totally.
It's like, yeah, he killed 5 people 40 years ago. Like, I don't know, and he got arrested,
them,
and he got
stabbing
arrested,
them
and she went away.
Crushing them. Like he doesn't have like John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer are real, and they did way worse than Michael Myers did. And like, there's something about not only him pointing that out that like tells you that like the only note I have written in capitals on my notes for this movie is everybody who like shitted on this movie and didn't get it must have had a real enviable childhood, because it's like this movie is for fucking trauma survivors. You know, if you had a fucking good life, like I kind of understand. If you didn't have a fucked up childhood, maybe I get why you didn't like this movie. But like the fact that Dave's character so adequately, so grounds the context of the killing. He's basically saying like, why are we so obsessed with these things? Why do we follow them over years? Why are you still precious about what happens to Michael Myers, a killer from 1978? And the fact that he contextualized it with real world events is another just brilliant piece of David Gordon Green bringing this story into a real inhabitable town. Like, you're really like, it's there, you live there, like, and every sequel failed at that,
pretty much. All right, so then that brings us to the house. How did we like the ending? Like, as far as like what went down with the I mean, listen. So, the movable thing that led to the basement. So they go down there, which then brings us to the trailer, which is like when Laurie is like, she sticks her head by the door, and I'm thinking like, there's nothing but glass here. What's going on? Like, of all things, right? But I'm like, all right, yeah, whatever. So he breaks, and this is like their first time that they break physical. Then he gets in the house, and then from there, what I really like is just how serious this was. So she was like very tactical. Like, she went into every room, checked it, and if he wasn't there, that's when the cage went down. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking like, fuck. I'm like, so she's kind of like just really minimizing the spots where he could be, and just like kind of getting him in there. And I'm thinking like, why didn't you just like do the trap where you think he is, and just fucking like blow the house up?
Why draw it out?
But yeah,
this had so many layers to me. This ending was like
all over the place. I mean, so good. Yeah.
It was like, the first thing that stood out is that, this whole movie we've been watching how she's prepared. And when Michael shows up, all that prep until all 3 of the women are in place to make this trap kind of set off, all of the prep that she has doesn't really work. Michael gets in. Michael gets a hold of her right away. Like, Michael winds up eluding her and evading her.
Throwing her out a window.
All of the prep that you do in the world, so much of what Karen and Laurie's characters are struggling with is control, and not feeling control, and being afraid that something could happen to them that's beyond their control. But Michael showing up, it's like there's no amount of prep you can do. And there's all this there were a lot of reactions to Laurie as a character. People, oh, she's badass, and I like almost immediately resented that identification of her, because Laurie is very much not a badass. She is not like Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2 doing like one-handed fucking pull-ups in an insane asylum for a decade. Like, she's scared, she's desperate, she's grasping at straws, she's living in fear. And what we learn from that house in this beautiful moment where she's holding Karen by the head as Karen's finally like accepting what her, having that big breakthrough of like, this is, my mother just wanted to protect me, and like having this, and Laurie's holding her by the head, and it pans over to the dollhouse on the floor, and I'm like, holy shit, Laurie is living in a Michael Myers trap. Like, the house that she has fortified in and lived in for 40 years is a trap for Michael Myers. Like, the psychological implications of that, she's basically just set up a mousetrap and then put a fucking pillow on it and went to bed herself. That is so just like gut-wrenching to me, that idea that it's like, where I live, where I lay my head is just a fucking lobster trap waiting for somebody else.
And
so
the other thing that really worked for me was, when Karen looks over at her KS rifle, and right before, like, because I'm thinking, like, why are they making so much fucking noise? And then the fucking Michael's like ripping that fucking that island thing off to get downstairs, and Karen's like, "Oh my God, Mom, I can't do this," and I'm thinking like, "Oh Jesus Christ!" And then just that fake out was so effective, because to me, I'm thinking like, holy shit, you guys really like planned this so well, and it just worked, like they they shoot him when she like fucking got him to show himself, and then he lands down there, and I don't know, it just worked. When I see the lever go,
it was
and it
so
turned
fucking effective. Once again, like you said, Judy Greer's performance
she was
made
the best.
It that good.
Yeah,
and that she does that. When she says gotcha, like when she has that amazing moment, like one of the top 5 moments in this fucking movie, she's yelling to her mother, "I can't do it. I can't do it." She's like, we're
all believed
supposed to believe that this is the Karen who thinks there's peace and love in the world and blah, blah, blah. And we see that like Karen and Lori have been preparing for this moment, right, to get Michael. But all of that control, all of that planning isn't what gets Michael, because Lori and Karen are struggling. Michael's got Karen by the leg. They can't shut the door. It's not until Allison, the granddaughter, the 3rd generation affected by this trauma, the only one who's not trying to control it, who's not trying to exert herself on top of this trauma, who's not saying, hey, you need to deal with it this way, you need to cope with it this way. She's living with it. She's being the parent to her mother and her grandmother. And what does she do? She sees a fucking knife and she fucking stabs him. She basically Hawkinses him.
Yeah.
These are the 2 characters that understand that like there is no amount of intellectualizing that will allow you to plan for what this fucking unstoppable fucking force is going to do. And it's like, while they're struggling, Andy, that's a real name, Allison just takes that knife, fucking drives it down, and then boom, trap shuts. It's like the 3 generations. You needed 3 generations of Strode women to come together to make that trap work. Because even the 2 of them that set it up, it would have failed if Allison wasn't there. Allison, who we're seeing that moment after the motion light kill of the fat kid, which we just like breezed right past.
Oh yeah,
which is such a fucking great moment.
That's a great one.
And also like provides like the same kind of thing I was talking about that fat kid before, where like all he likes this girl, but like is such like a primitive kind of juvenile thing for him to think, and it's his friend's girlfriend. But as soon as she's not his friend's girlfriend, he's like trying to isolate her. He's trying to get her to an environment where she doesn't feel comfortable, making her jump that fence. And he's like, "Oh, I thought you liked it." It's like, "Oh, just because I'm not with him means that I'm going to be with you because you said something nice to me." But then we see him sitting there struggling with it, talking to a shadow that we know is Michael, and we know he doesn't know that. And he's like, "I thought she liked me. I just wanted to have her." And he's using all of these kind of like, kind of dude possessive words that are part of like this ancient zeitgeist that unfavors women. And then that use of motion light in his death was just chef's kiss, dude. Chef's kiss on that one.
Chef kiss.
And then when she sees him on the fence and Michael walks out and there's just a fence in between them, I haven't even said the fact that I think this is John Carpenter's best score that he has ever done for any movie. When that chord comes in, that like, when he steps out from behind the fence, it like my bones fucking chill.
Yeah.
And then she's running to her mother's house, to her grandmother's house. We're watching her run there, and we know that Michael's already there. It's like there's something there that I haven't even yet kind of put together. There's something there about her running to that house while her mother and grandmother are already being brutalized, and getting there in time to fucking make that fateful stab to make the trap work.
Yeah, man.
And like,
I was just gonna say, now I feel like watching it all over again after this.
Me too, dude. I bought it on Amazon. I'm gonna rewatch the shit out of it. And I know this was another divisive moment that I'm really interested to ask you about now that we've gotten to the end of the film, where there was a lot of people saying, wouldn't you stay there and watch him die? Is that a feeling you had?
No, I didn't have that at all.
Right, neither did I. I heard that complaint from so many people.
No, I mean, listen, you want another movie, and that's what we wanted.
Yes.
And, I never put two and two together that you see him, and then they pan somewhere, and then they go back to the fire, and he's not there. I didn't really think anything of it. I was just thinking like, oh, okay. I'm like, I guess this is it. But then, later on I find out that they were trying to put two movies. So you know that.
There's the post-credit scene too.
Yeah. So, at the post-credit scene? What was that? Remind me.
The post-credit scene where, when Michael Furtz gets the mask out of the podcaster's trunk is the first time we hear the breath. Like the ADR Michael.
Oh, okay. So then it was the breath.
And then after the post credits, you see the fire, but you hear Michael's breath.
Okay, yeah.
It could have even been added after the fact when they knew they were going to get a sequel.
No, you're right.
But yeah, it's interesting you come at it like that's and be like, oh, they know they want to make another movie, so they can't stay there and watch Michael die. I was coming from it with like a narrative standpoint where it's like, all right, this movie's been kind of grounded in some genuine realism, and like I really examined this scene when rewatching it. You can't really tell if Laurie's trying to stay and watch and the two girls are dragging her away, or if they're all going away because they have to leave because not only is the building on fire, but Laurie's injured. Like they need to bring her to a hospital. So she can't stay there and watch him die. But there's also this element of dealing with trauma where the trauma is there. He's trapped. He's on fire. He's looking at you. Maybe you don't, the whole torture porn element of modern horror dictates to us, the viewer, that like we're not satisfied unless we all watch it happen, see the grisly fucking details, when in fact this is a movie not about killing, which like a lot of the slasher movies are just about killing. It's about that trauma, and Laurie's there. Her daughter had a breakthrough and they're closer. The daughter has agency. She's the one who made it happen. The mother is looking at the face of the thing that has destroyed her life, even though she was the only one left alive. And I feel like as a traumatized person, I could relate to this idea that Laurie in her head is going, you know what? Like, I've been looking at this guy in my nightmares for the last 40 years. Like, just get me away.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at him.
I agree for sure. And, but I don't know if you must know that when they wrote it, they wanted to release two movies like kind of in a row. But the studio,
that I did not know.
Yeah. The studio was like, well, if the first one bombs, we don't want to be tied to the second one because they didn't know what was going to happen because they wrote it as two movies. So I don't really know exactly. Yeah. So that's why I feel like they knew that he was going to somehow get out of there, which is why that quick shot of him not being there when the fire went, because first you see him and then you don't.
Yeah.
So
which is like, I mean, let's not pretend that's not also fan service to the end of the first one and like well done.
Yeah. But even the second one, like the end of Halloween 2, like he fucking went up in flames.
Yeah, after being shot a million times.
Well, he got shot in the
problems with Halloween 2.
Well, he got shot in the fucking both eyes, so he was blind. And I'm just thinking like
Halloween 2. I remember hearing like an interview with Carpenter where he's like, "Yeah, man, I wrote that movie with one night and a 6-pack of beer," and I'm sitting there going like, "Yeah, man, it shows. You shouldn't be bragging about it."
Well, because he didn't want to do it. Like he didn't want to. He wanted to. So he's like, nah, the movie's over. I just want to do like he wanted to do like an anthology, like a different story every Halloween. They were like, no, we want the Michael Myers. So he's like, I'm not going to direct it, but I'll write it. They
slaved to the producers at that point.
And then at that point, he was just like, you know what? He's like, fuck it, I'll just light him on fire. No, he's like, I'll blow him up. That way they can't bring him.
There's this, I don't know if you're a premium Stitcher listener, but, that Paul Rust and Matt Gorley Halloween rewatch series, which is very funny, but, like, it also has, like, just genuine insights from two guys who like these movies. And they keep referencing this book Taking Shape that has a lot of great information in it, where it's like Halloween 1 kind of wrote the blueprint for slashers, and then Friday the 13th came on the heels of it, with Sean Cunningham being this like very deliberate, like, I'm going to take the obvious things of this movie and churn out these franchises. And so what Halloween excelled at by being original, Halloween 2 came after some of these slasher movies.
Yes.
And I feel like Halloween 2 is a good slasher movie, but it's a terrible sequel to Halloween.
Okay. Well,
the kills are great. The kills are great. There's a twist. There's like, there's jump scares. It's got, if I remember correctly, there's a handful of titties in that. It's got all the.
And Leo Rossi's in there.
It's got all the stuff. It's a very good slasher movie, but it's not a Halloween sequel. And every sequel that followed, like, I liked moments of Halloween 3, and much like what I admired about the new Halloween, I liked that they were willing to go there and kind of do something weird. And, but this, in my mind, there's Halloween and there's Halloween, which is weird because there are two movies named Halloween with a lot of chronology in between that I am very happy to ignore.
Well, before we end, I want to say one of my favorite Easter egg things, speaking of Halloween 3, was
the masks.
Yeah, the masks. That was so cool.
Yep.
Like the three kids that were wearing, like, it was like the witch, the fucking pumpkin, and whoever else.
3 more days till Halloween.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool thing to throw in there. And just finishing up here, do you feel like this movie is better than H2O?
I think it's definitely better than H2O. As far as just qualifying it, it's definitely better. H2O has some weird moments. There's a lot of inconsistency about who Michael kills. The mask looks terrible.
The mask looks terrible.
The score in H2O is so bad that it really fucks with a lot of scenes.
Williamson wrote that, right? Kevin Williamson? I feel like
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like he had a hand in writing that, because they were like, "Oh, you did Scream and you did all this other shit." So
it's so Scream.
Yeah.
It really is coming on the heels of Scream. It's got some good performances. I was blown away with the similarities in the Lauries, how like alcoholism was there, how deadbeat parents were there, how she must have had her kid young, how, David Gordon Green said that the Laurie in his movie was based on one line from the first movie when she says, "Do as I say." And he's like, we see that Laurie, who's this very sweet, character in the first movie, that when she's afraid, she gets aggressive. That's what Gordon Green said. And he's like, we're developing from there. And this movie kind of has, H2O was like what late 90s, early 2000s Laurie would do dealing with something like this. And Halloween 2018 is so steeped in the culture of the time that, like, it's crazy to see some of the elements that really were shared in both movies. But, like, there's no auteur kind of vision to H2O. It's just a very competent reintroduction.
Yeah.
And what H2O had going for it the most was such a satisfying ending.
It was, and I think that they had no intentions on making 8, so I think that's why they did it like that, if I remember correctly. But also, like, it was of the time, like even like the cover was very much like, okay, we're trying to do like this Scream thing. But
you hear that fucking Creed song in there twice.
Don't remind me. But when I recently rewatched it within the last few years, it was a lot better than I thought it was. There were certain things.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, there were certain things that worked really well. There was other things that didn't, like when like Michael Myers did like a one-arm pull-up.
And then they revisited that in Resurrection. It's like, yo, come on.
I was like, what the fuck? Just like, did he just like lower himself down with one arm? Like, why does he look like he's 5'6"?
And totally silently, of course.
Yeah.
Man,
LL
totally.
Cool J, what a wasted
and his erotic poetry.
What a wasted role, because it's like, okay, we want to have LL Cool J in here, but we have nothing to give him. So let's give him this terrible fucking role.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any kind of connective tissue between Cool J and H2O and Busta and Resurrection. Like they have to, like there's a one rapper per movie clause or something.
We need a rapper on this one.
Yeah, yes. Sorry guys, got to get him in here.
Listen,
but like how Lori kills him, like she needs to be sure, which is the exact opposite of what this movie does, because so much of H2O's ending relied on Lori's just driving decision to like, I have to see him dead. And then once she does it, the movie ends. I thought that was the best part of that movie, was how there's no kind of simmer down after that. There's no like her wearing a policeman's coat sitting in the back of an ambulance. Like she chops his fucking head off. Like they're crying. It's this emotional moment. And then she's just like, whoop, there goes your head. Then
then you hear din, 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 din. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. So definitely not as good, but I think that's a tall order at the very least, because everybody wasn't the horror genre was kind of dying.
Oh, it was like
Scream, and everybody had to do a Scream after that. I'm sure H2O only got greenlit because of Scream's success.
I'm pretty sure, I'll look it up, but I think Kevin Williamson was the one who like wrote a lot of the script, and I think that's what happened.
Right. I feel like you're right. They even like have a screenshot of somebody watching Scream on a TV in H2O. Like it's that embedded in the story itself.
All right. So anything else that we want to say in closing? We have like a little bit left.
I'll give you the one. I mean, I wasn't kidding when I told you before this. Like, we could do a mini series on what I have to say about this movie. Like, I'm so grateful the opportunity not only to talk about it with anyone, but to talk about it with you specifically. This has been a real treat. I feel like I've just like fucking like had a breakthrough in therapy. I got to say so much. Like I finally, you got to come out with it.
You definitely, you dropped some gems.
There's just so much. It's so dense. There's so much stuff in there. And I wonder, I have like one kind of fun question, which is the one that I didn't get to since we kind of answered all the other ones that I have. So, and I have a feeling we might have the same answer to this. It doesn't have to be a remake. It doesn't have to be a sequel.
Damn, I'm going to run out of time. I got to restart it.
Oh, do we really?
I do.
Do I got to kill it now?
No, you could keep recording. I'll do it on mine.
I wonder what Carpenter movie you think is best for revisitation.
Man,
like if there's a movie in that catalog, because I feel like now we have never been more ready for like a David Gordon Green auteur styled remake of They Live.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'm gonna run out of time. Hold on. Let me just keep your thing rolling, and I'm gonna redo. I'm gonna arm another track on mine. All right. Okay. Cool.
Will do.
Damn. So that's a good question. So what genre? I was thinking about Carpenter today. Actually, so last night I went to go. I went to sleep to The Thing. So at night, like
nightmare fuel, dude.
So the thing is like when at night when it's like 11, like if it's something new, I don't put anything on later than 8 o'clock because I can't concentrate.
Okay.
Like if it's like 10 or 11, because I'm a morning person. I wake up at like 8. So once we get to like 11 and I want to watch something, I put on something that I could memorize. So
like you're not going to miss anything.
Like I know where I'm at. I know where I'm at. So at 11, like me and my girlfriend start watching The Thing, and I started thinking about Carpenter, and I'm just thinking like, man, like, was there anyone better, like from that world?
Seriously,
like Halloween, The Fog, They Live, Big Trouble in Little China. Like his
whole vibe, just it's so. As time goes on, it only is revealed more and more how great he was. It's like he's getting better. All these movies are getting better with age. And like you see a movie like Get Out and you're like, that is because of Carpenter.
Yeah.
That movie never would have happened. Like not never, but you know what I mean? Like the lineage is so clear.
Man, it kills me when like I read on occasion, maybe on Facebook, where people are like, oh, it's such... People say Get Out is like this like overhyped piece of garbage, and I'm thinking like, yo, if you didn't like Us, fine. I'll give you Us. I liked Us. I liked Us more after the end. I liked Us more after the ending. But Get Out is fucking brilliant.
There's nothing not brilliant about it.
It's fucking brilliant.
I'm sorry, but that's got to be. This might just be my own, kind of bias. There's. I mean, a gatekeeper fucking fanboy is maybe my least favorite type of fucking person. Like you're contrarian. It's because people love it that you want to tear it down, and I can't imagine that unless you're just like, well, I don't like how they're empowering black people because you're a racist fucker or something. Like, what's not to like in Get Out? Like, it's a truly revolutionary piece of movie making on every level, and there is no more direct influence than John Carpenter. Like that vibe has really, he was way ahead of the fucking curve.
Now, if you ask me what I think, I know I mean, They Live is a good one, especially now. Especially the reason why Carpenter made They Live, which he said it was so anti-Reagan at the time.
This would be such a in the social media age. The idea that news isn't to be trusted, like that everything's screen based, that there's demagoguery all over. I feel like They Live. You could even cast the fucking wrestler. Give me fucking Dave Bautista in They Live 2 Electric Boogaloo. I'll fucking take it.
He's available.
Yeah.
I'd like to see like a real good remake of The Fog.
Me too, man. That's a great one.
How about Christine? Like, how'd you make
Christine?
How good is Christine?
Christine, that's
like how is that? Good. How is that a good movie? It's about a car. You know what I'm saying? Like, how'd you do that? Like, I'm watching it.
The premise is so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Yet every time it's on, I'm like, this movie's so good.
And it's like, how am I supposed to be afraid of Thornton Mellon's kid? This is insane.
Thornton fucking Mellon's kid. I'm like, I can't be afraid of this guy. And it's like,
Christine was a fucking great movie, 100%.
Yeah,
You could even make a Fast and the Furious horror remake of Christine.
I even like the premise. I don't know if you've ever seen Ghost of Mars.
I forced myself through that one. I did not enjoy it.
But I mean, I like the beginning. Like I thought it was like cool. I like the I feel like obviously, man, there was something about typecasting rappers and giving them like the like you do the like it's like, all right, you do the sassy black guy rapper thing. And I'm just like, yo, like, thank God we're so beyond that, because it's like embarrassing. It's like, it was just so bad. Like Ice Cube.
I feel like Ludacris in Crash just killed it for everybody.
Oh, that was good.
That was the end of that. But you're right. Yeah, there was like this one rapper per movie clause, and I feel like there's something to do with horror not being taken seriously, where it's like, oh, these artists want to start acting, let's throw them in horror movies.
It's like we'll throw you at the bottom, and you'll work your way up to Crash.
And it probably has it probably doesn't have nothing to do with like maybe them saying, oh, I'd love to be in a horror movie, like that's the genre that maybe Busta Rhymes or whatever wanted to get into.
I mean, that Resurrection is so like, it's October and it's always randomly on cable, like if you put on like AMC or whatever. And sometimes I just put
like a
it
real
on.
Sucker for renting it.
Yo, it's well, you got the
$4 well spent.
For sure. That's fine. I mean, that's what I did with Halloween. Just I'm like, $4 just to get it real quick.
Halloween Resurrection is so bad.
It's
I'm
so
fresh off of
bad.
my first viewing yesterday, so I'm still
it's impressively bad, and I think the technology now that it seems so dated makes like the story even right. It just makes it even worse.
You're right. It's like whenever you see somebody check their pager in a movie or something.
It's like, oh, let me check my T-Mobile Sidekick. I think somebody.
Yeah, or they're making like topical references and shit. Like it just locks it in that time so specifically. Resurrection had every like fucking C-list like best friend from some dumb movie in it.
Yeah.
The script literally felt like it was written by autocorrect. It's just nonsense.
You're like, I know this. You know what was a fun open and to close because we've been going forever. Going back to H2O, I thought that was a fun open. So it's the girl.
It was.
It's the nurse from Halloween 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
Joseph Gordon-Levitt up in there.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this was cool. Like, for some reason it worked. Although the very end of the scene where like the cops are like going into the house and like Michael just like drives away, I'm thinking like when no one sees this car.
Yeah, there was a little. That was part of the inconsistency with H2O too, because in the beginning, like we're introduced to 3 characters who are dispatched of pretty brutally, and then we see the beginning of H2O. Michael is just leaving a lot of survivors, and I'm like, all right, dude, what's your game plan here? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, what's your yeah? Because then, it's everything was married to Laurie Strode. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it so much less scary than the first movie. I can close with a little anecdote here. Andy Matichek, who plays Allison in the new Halloween, her mother was a babysitter when she was a teenager in the 70s, right? And her mother goes to see Halloween in the theaters, and it fucking traumatizes her. Like, she quits her babysitting job that she had been doing for years.
I believe
because this movie fucking traumatized her, right? So she has a daughter. She, makes references to the fact that, like, oh yeah, Halloween was a movie that really fucked me up. And then 2 years in a row, when Andy Matichek was still a kid, somebody pranked their house by dressing up like Michael Myers and standing on the corner of their block for like hours. Oh. They said it was literally like hours because they had like timed it because the mother was so scared that she wouldn't even go out to confront the guy. Wow. And then sure fucking enough, she winds up in a fucking Halloween movie. Like sometimes the universe makes a little bit of sense.
Oh God, that's so great. That's
crazy,
great.
Right?
Yeah, and if you're, in the 70s, you really had no point of reference. Like if you made it past and you didn't see like Last House on the Left or something really traumatizing, like
if
you're a babysitter and you watch Halloween in like 78 where you're like everything is still kind of like hidden and like you don't
there's nothing like that.
There's nothing like that. You might be like, yo, what the fuck? I'm never babysitting again.
Yeah. Even like The Exorcist is so like stuck in religion and like it's this insulated kind of thing where like the genuine and very successfully done horror of Halloween is that you gave somebody like this woman, like Andy Matichek's mother, you give her this experience that scares her so much because it feels like it could be her town that it's happening in. And like, that is what's so scary about Halloween. And that's what was so great about these guys taking over and making it this like kind of auteur movie where they really dig deep into like what made this is the movie that created the slasher genre that over the years has become so diluted and not scary that it's like they've made a new beginning out of reinventing the very first beginning. And it puts us in a great position where I feel like horror is really just like it's an undeniable fandom that's only getting bigger and bigger. And I mean, you have horror's putting out some of the best movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the most dependable genres right now. And you have prestige pieces like Get Out getting that kind of attention. None of that's by accident.
No, even TV, man, like fucking I've been I don't know if you started Lovecraft Country, but holy
I have. I've been watching it. I'm having trouble understanding some bits of it, but like it's good. It's definitely fucking great. You know?
I feel like certain shows like that like it's J.J. Abrams and Jordan Peele, and I'm just thinking like, man, those you could
Misha Green.
Yeah, you could feel like all three of their fingerprints on that end product. You're like, this is.
And I know I've talked about it a bunch of times, but it's I don't know if you've ever seen it, but Channel Zero was this excellent horror series.
I heard. I know it's up on Shudder.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
Really, really, really good.
The Tooth Monster.
Twilight Zone-y and horror and like human stories. Like that's what, McBride was had said something about when he was asked about the humor in the script for Halloween 2018, and he's like, humor and horror rely on some very similar principles, which is setup and payoff.
Yeah.
And that like these movies are enhanced by being able to watch them in an audience of more than yourself, and that what makes something truly funny or truly scary is exponentially related to your investment in that character. It enhances the scares and the laughs if characters are given enough care and attention that you're scared for them or you're laughing with or at them.
Well, I can't wait for, Halloween Kills and then Halloween Ends.
Same, dude. I'm psyched to see what happens. Like, they're bringing the Doyle kids back, and that's going to be a whole new fucking onion to peel. I can't wait.
Yeah. Yo, did you know? So that meme with the cat on one end and the blonde girl crying, pointing?
Oh, sure.
So you know who the girl next to the blonde girl is?
Oh, God. Who?
It's Lindsay Lloyd, the girl from Halloween.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah, she's one of the housewives, like one of those shows.
Shut up.
So that's where that scene is from, and she's
what?
Yeah, because like when I found out, I was like,
That's
holy shit! I'm like,
crazy.
that's little Lindsay Lloyd sitting there watching
That
TV.
is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, wait, how did she get Desperate Housewife status? Does she like have a tequila brand now or something, or what?
I don't know. Maybe she's married to someone. Is that what it's called? No,
Fuck.
Something Housewives of wherever the fuck.
I mean, it could be one of a million as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. I know it's its own genre of TV now, the desperate genre.
Yes, but I mean,
Just like the throwing white wine genre of TV.
I couldn't imagine, like, I'm like watching this meme with the cat over and over again, and then I find out it's like, oh yeah, that's the girl who's going to be in the next Halloween movie because she's that was her character. She was a little kid in Halloween 1.
It's fucking wild.
Yeah.
And I hear that Danielle Harris might be showing up in the next one too.
I hope so. Why not?
Me too.
Throw her
Me
in.
too. She's the only reason 4 and 5 are watchable.
4 is great. I think 4 is still kind of cool. It has its flaws, but it still had like great characters. 5 is pretty brutal to watch.
Yeah, just a cynical piece of trash made by somebody who clearly had no reverence for the genre or the movie
absolutely.
itself.
Yeah. Not at all. Yeah, and
It's just a cynical piece of shit.
Garbage. But
and what's crazy is that's like the first time I ever saw. It's burned in my mind. I have a pretty good long-term memory.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
the first time I ever saw Michael Myers was that poster for number 5 in my local video store.
89?
And just like how she was there in that little clown outfit or whatever.
Yep.
It burned in the brain. And I remember being like, well, what is so scary about this? And then here I am all these years later, still picking apart that same question. And like, I'm still get the same fucking nerd boner for it every time.
Well, awesome, Jake. Awesome talking to you. We really fucking jumped into this movie, and this will be a really fun, October episode for Red River. And
same, man. I had such a great time doing this, man. Thank you.
Yeah,
this
man.
was such a blast talking to you
sure.
about this.
I miss you. I'm glad I got to talk to you for so long. And
Same, definitely.
Hopefully, I will see you sooner than later.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Happy October surprise.
Later, Jake.
Adios.